In some of the stories, they'll bring tears to your eyes about the item itself. And what's beautiful about that is that we're figuring out ways to then take those stories that somebody would share about the item and in the right way share it with the next owner of that item. What you end up with is this very human connection about the stories of the things, which really become stories about people and connection, and it becomes much more human. What I believe about that is that we long for that so long as there's still 2-day shipping. Nobody wants to get away from the fact that when you want a jacket, you expect it there in 2 days. It should come to your door. But if there's a way to keep that part of it, but to get this to be a more human experience because the jacket is coming from someone else's 14-year-old, and you can know 3 sentences about how they've loved this jacket and where they've gone. Every time you look at your child in that jacket, it's just a little bit more special. As you pass it off, you feel a bit more connected, that the world is a slightly better place. It's hard to overestimate the effect of what this future looks like with a more human-centric way to move items through.
Nicolette Richet is on a mission to help people with chronic diseases use food as medicine and heal their bodies. She looks to her grandmother, who lived in a small village in Malawi, and to the First Nations of her home in Canada for the inspiration and deep conscious knowledge to carry out her vision for a healthier future. Through her nutritional coaching business, her chain of organic cafes, and her community outreach efforts, Nicolette is helping people get back to the diets of their ancestors in order to live stronger, more vibrant lives today. According to Nicolette, living life on a more conscious level by caring for the environment and our bodies with real food not only helps heal disease, but also helps heal some of society's deepest wounds.
We'll never be able to undo the damage that we collectively have caused Indigenous Aboriginal communities, First Nations communities around the world, but maybe we can reconcile all the differences and find a collective consciousness to move forward from. But really a lot of the learning that's really going to save our planet, save our communities, I truly believe comes from First Nations communities, because they know no matter what, we are all connected, even if you're not an Indigenous member, born and raised in that band or that nation or that tribe. And so we can learn so much by stopping to talk, by listening more, by observing what happens within these incredible communities of individuals that have lived off the land for so long. We all are Indigenous to some land somewhere. I was born in Africa, and I was just there last fall visiting my grandmother, who's 91, who lives in a tiny village called Chiradzulu in Malawi, and there's no electricity. There's no water. You have to walk for miles to get water. Women carry babies on their back with 5 gallons of water on their head. Everybody grows their own food from scratch, and there's not an ounce of plastic in the entire village because there's no refrigerators and there's no packaged food. Literally, if you want to eat, you grow the food and you reap the harvest and cook it. I think that I have a deep connection, especially because my great-great-grandmother was in a slave trade lineup. In a small little village in Malawi, everybody was taken to the eastern seaboard to be shipped off to the Arabs or to America to become a slave. And when my great-great-grandmother was 8 years old, she walked away from a slave trade lineup and made her way to my grandmother's village. I just have huge regard for anybody who can live off the land, anybody who is connected to nature, connected to our food systems.
One of the ways that Nicolette is using the knowledge from these communities to create positive change today is through using food as medicine through her businesses. Listen as she describes the moment that started her journey.
About 22 years ago, a friend of mine, her dad was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and he ended up switching to what I call a pre-colonial diet. Pretty much all the food is 100% organic. It's all plant-based. It's all whole food. And there's really no ingredients in that therapy or lifestyle that contains anything that would have been made in any of the post-colonial times. So, there's not even any salt, there's no refined sugar, there's no refined oil. Everything is 100% unrefined whole foods. So our cafe is built on those principles. The reason I started the cafes was because my friend's dad was able to heal from stage 4 cancer. He was given 3 months to live, and he was 72 at the time, and he ended up living another 22 years. So he only passed away at 94 years old, and he lived cancer-free that entire time. So I started teaching this to other people about 11 years ago, and all of these people who started adopting this pre-colonial way of eating, so unrefined plant-based whole foods, they started healing from all different types of chronic illnesses that they would come to see me for. Diabetes and heart disease and autoimmune disorders and infertility. I can't tell you how many people have had babies as a result of doing the therapy that I teach them. But the therapy is based on indigenous foods, really. Like it's all the tubers, the carrots and potatoes and turnips and leeks and onions and garlic, like everything that you find in nature. It doesn't have to be tampered with. So our cafe was created because my clients couldn't find a place to eat and access that kind of food. But what it's been able to do, people often look at us and say, oh, you have a set of cafes. And really what we are educational institutions. So every time somebody comes in and somebody asks for salt, it's an opportunity to say, hey, we don't put salt in any of our food, but if you try it, it's delicious. And the reason we don't put salt in food is because, and so everything is a learning opportunity. Every business has an opportunity to stand up for something that they absolutely value more than anything else. We stand up for food security. We stand up for the reconciliation and working with Indigenous communities and teaching the youth about food that heals instead of food that harms. We've proven that we can be profitable and still be sustainable and still be vastly ethical and values and principles. You've heard the old saying, everything in moderation, and a little bit of this won't hurt. However, when you're working with someone who has a chronic disease and they need to heal it because they're either facing surgery or getting on medications, or they need to get off medications, or in a lot of my clients' cases, it is death is around the corner. When you're working with them, there is no such thing as moderation when it comes to the food. In one sense, there is balance, because I know there's a lot of people who will say, oh no, I don't believe in chemo or surgery or radiation or medications or antibiotics. But in every individual's case, what we have to do is balance it out between the amazingness of Western medicine with the incredible amazingness of food as medicine. And then by doing that and working together, what we see is that my clients get incredible results really, really quickly. So they could have been suffering from infertility for 15 years, and then they actually get pregnant within 2 months and successfully go ahead to have a baby. Or they've had diabetes for 20 years, but they're taking insulin, and within as little as 7 days to 30 days, all of a sudden they're not on their medication anymore. And